Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. I'm not used to saying that yet. National Bobblehead Day in America, and the day Orthodox Christians in America and around the world celebrate Christmas. The only Christmas holiday recognized in countries like Russia, Bulgaria, Ethiopia, and about a dozen others who celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ after 40 days of fasting and then a big celebration today. President Biden and the First Lady are in California today after visiting with victims' families and community leaders in New Orleans yesterday.
My wife Jill and I are here to stand with you, to grieve with you, to pray with you, to let you know you are not alone. The rest of the nation is looking at you as well. I've directed my team to make every resource available to federal, state, and local law enforcement to complete this investigation quickly and do whatever else we can.
Biden also approved the mayor's request to raise the security level for Mardi Gras to the highest level there is. And hopefully the city will use those portable steel stoppers that the superintendent of police didn't even know they had, as you heard yesterday with Lydia Serrani. Today, President Biden, trying to make the most of his time left in office, will declare two new national monuments, one in Southern California near the Joshua Tree National Park, absolutely gorgeous, and the other in Northern California near the Oregon border. Along with the action that he took yesterday, banning offshore oil drilling in 625 million acres of ocean, Biden has now federally protected more than 1 million square miles of land and ocean as president. And how much did you enjoy this yesterday?
The state of the vote for the President of the United States, as delivered to the President of the Senate, is as follows. The whole number of the electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, the majority is 270. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes. The whole number of electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for Vice President of the United States are as follows. J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio has received 312 votes. Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota has received 226 votes. This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected, President and Vice President of the United States, each for a term beginning on the 20th day of January 2025, and shall be entered together with the list of the votes on the journals of the House and the Senate. Thank you very much.
Vice President Harris, in her role as president of the Senate, became the first vice president to announce her own presidential defeat since Al Gore 24 years ago. More from Carl Higbie on Frontline.
She's all about firsts and historic, right? She's actually the first minority woman to ever preside over her own laws, too. Interesting. Add that to her book. But I thought that Donald Trump wasn't eligible to be president, right, Jamie Raskin?
So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified, and then we need bodyguards for everybody.
There was actually one objection for every woman who beat Donald Trump in a presidential election. Oh, wait. Oh, there wasn't even one objection. I thought at least we would have had like the brain trust of Maxine Waters, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, like someone. Nope. It was that much of a resounding victory. Yeah, weird. If only the 80-something million that showed up to vote for Biden had turned out this time, right? But the virtue signaling, any attempt Kamala Harris was to try to save face was hilarious. She released this video trying to show us how virtuous she really is.
Today at the United States Capitol, I will perform my constitutional duty as Vice President of the United States to certify the results of the 2024 election. This duty is a sacred obligation.
Right. She is doing this out of virtue because she's so just, right? Yeah, sure. She has to, because her entire drumbeat for the last 4 years was anyone who denied the results of any election was somehow a domestic terrorist and should be completely removed from polite society. Look at her. All right. That look that she has on her face brings me probably the most joy in the world. This woman stood there and told you and me and anyone who thinks just like us that we're terrible, no good, racist, homophobic bigots. And that talking point didn't go her way in this last election. She still believes it. And because you got shellacked so badly in November, you have totally lost any moral high ground to oppose it. You have no legal ground either. Also, because in 2022, your party and majority passed a bill called the Electoral Reform Act and Presidential Transition Improvement Act of 2022. This little tidbit right here, I think, is the only thing forcing her to not pitch a fit all over having to certify the election of her own loss. Little section that states, specifies that the role of the vice president during the joint session shall be ministerial in nature, meaning she can't object. So her little video that she put out before this is such a joke. Also raises the objection threshold in Congress to at least 1/5 of the duly sworn and sworn members of both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Look, am I spiking the football out here? You bet I am, because what do I say every day? Make them live by their own rules. But the fact that they passed a law to clarify it meant that in 2020, there was like maybe some gray area around it. They clarified it in the law of what Trump was asking Pence. And seeing how they had to drop all the J6 cases together on Trump and that no one actually was charged anywhere with insurrection at all means that it was not the worst attack on democracy since the Civil War, even though they keep saying that wall to wall today on every network they can get on. In fact, one could argue that in 1983, the attack on our Capitol, where radical leftists bombed the Capitol, that was worse. And their leader, Susan Rosenberg, the leader had her sentence commuted by Bill Clinton, a Democrat. And she went on to sit on the board of BLM. No wonder we had $2 billion in damage from that group. No moment of silence at the Capitol for that one. And then, as VP candidate, Kamala Harris, oh, that's right, she raised a bunch of money to bail out those same BLM protesters who burnt down cities. Weird. And then she had to stand and certify this election today. It's bittersweet for her. The DOJ, though, is preparing to charge another, as of today, another 200 people 4 years later. And you still haven't charged these people? Let it go, guys. This is proof that this was about destroying people who supported Trump. The DOJ is literally terrorizing people.
That is Carl Higbie, host of Frontline, 5 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. Sean Kreisman and Emma Reckenberg had a very compelling interview with one of the hundreds of J6 defendants that have been terrorized by the Department of Justice. Listen closely to this.
Initially, I was charged with 6 different charges. I was indicted on 4. After 3 years of trying to defend myself legally with different attorneys, I just ended up taking a plea to the civil disorder.
Victoria, I'm wondering, and it's an interesting chance to be able to speak with someone who was there that day. That would have been sentenced and gone through that, can you walk us through what was going through your mind in that moment? I mean, obviously, it became pretty chaotic pretty quickly. Did you anticipate that happening?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, I just went to D.C. to see and hear Trump speak, and that was not at all anything I thought would be going on.
No, and you got to the point, and this often happens, though, but you got to the point where, as you explained, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it was easier for you to plea out than to continue years of your life to fight this legally. Is that an accurate statement?
Absolutely. It's meant to destroy you and your family financially, emotionally. People don't realize that before you're even sentenced, you're on pretrial probation. So it was years of hell.
Victoria, is this an emotional moment for you reflecting on this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's difficult, and even 4 years later, you could in this interview we can see obviously the sting of this that still sits with you. Do you have regrets about that day? Do you wish you'd never been? Are you detached from politics now? I mean, what has changed with you?
What has changed? Well, I definitely have PTSD from the whole thing, and as not just myself, all J6ers do. It's ruined our lives. We've been called terrorists. We've been made to be the villains in a lot of circumstances. People just simply walked in a building and walked out.
January 6th defendant Victoria White, who is representative of so many other January 6th defendants that walked in, walked around, and walked out. Then there is Enrique Tarrio, the former Proud Boy, who wasn't even at the Capitol on January 6th. We've talked about Enrique plenty in the past. He's sitting in prison after being sentenced to 22 years. His mother spoke with Greg Kelly last night.
You know, the federal government, I think, had it out for Enrique Tarrio. You remember the worst of Black Lives Matter, right? All hail George Floyd, all this nonsense. I mean, the death and destruction coast to coast. Enrique Tarrio, one day, what did he do? Well, he was a little bit frustrated, and with his friends, in a controlled environment, they burned a Black Lives Matter flag. Well, they actually sent him to jail for that. The federal government sent him to jail for 155 days. They were following this guy all over the place. But that's nothing compared to his situation right now. 22 years in prison for a couple of innocuous emails he sent and received. He wasn't at the Capitol. He didn't break anything. He didn't hurt anybody. It's absolutely insane, but it's happened in America. And we are joined by Thuni Tarrio, his mom, great lady, and also Nayeeb Hassan, the attorney for Enrique Tarrio. Welcome to you both. Wow, it's good to see you again, though, and I feel like he's coming home, Mrs. Tarrio. How do you feel? You think it's going to happen?
Oh, Greg, I think he's coming home. Yes. Thank you for having us on your show. Actually, he's watching tonight. So just want to say hello to the guys there in Pollock, Louisiana. And yes, I feel he's coming home.
Well, that's awesome. He's watching in prison. Hello, inmates. And be nice to Enrique. And guards. Oh, all right. I'm not going to say anything else. I hope everything's going well there in the prison. Nayeeb, let me ask you, the mechanics of getting a pardon, how is that working out? What does it mean? You know, is a commutation involved? What do you have to do? Have you been contacted by any Trump people? What's happening?
So, and Greg Kelly, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. So we've reached out to individuals of the transition team, and we've also reached out to other individuals which may be connected to Trump. And we sent out various letters out there. Of course, there was one letter that was released today that's requesting a full and complete pardon for our client, Enrique Tarrio. What's going on in this situation is a complete travesty and injustice for him and various other individuals that are J6ers.
Election night, you must have been... You had so much invested in this. If President Trump had lost, there would be literally no hope for a pardon for your son. We were all on the edge of our seat on election night, Mrs. Tarrio, but you more so, I would imagine.
Yes, of course. We were up all night, and but I had faith, and I knew by the numbers and by the faith of Enrique that President Trump would be elected, and he did, and by big numbers. So we were very happy that night.
I want to show video, I think we have it, of Enrique when he was arrested, when they came in and took him into custody. This is years ago, so he's been in custody for quite some time. My question is, what kind of price have you had to pay? January 6th, they made it out to be the worst day in American history, literally. It was so hyped up, the overreaction, the exaggeration, anybody tied to it, right? The people wanted to avoid you. I'm asking you, actually, what did you suffer, Mrs. Tarrio, as a result of all of the hype and your son getting arrested?
Greg, that video that you're showing right now is the most horrific morning for me. We have suffered a lot. Our family has lost a lot financially, and it's just destroyed. They not only convicted and sentenced Enrique Tarrio, they sentenced and convicted our whole family and all of the J6 families, for that matter. The conviction rate is extremely high in all these cases. There's only been, I think, maybe one or two cases. But it's been horrific. It's been the most terrible experience, especially because it's been so unfair.
That's Zuni Tarrio, who has been on Newsmax before, the mother of former Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, an Afro-Cuban who the Biden administration and DOJ has called a white supremacist leader. Again, he wasn't even there on January 6th and is serving 22 years. Enrique and hundreds of others like him that are in prison and their families, as you just heard, are holding on to this.
And if I win, we will treat those people from January 6th fairly. We will treat them fairly. And if it requires pardons, we will give them pardons because they are being treated so unfairly. We're going to look very strongly at J6. Those people, there has never been people treated more horrifically than J6 hostages. They should immediately be released, immediately, the J6 hostages.
Some of the many comments from Donald Trump about J6 defendants on the campaign trail last year. Not only did the DOJ say it's looking to charge up to another 200 people in connection with January 6, 2021, President-elect Trump also got word yesterday that Judge Merchan in the New York case denied his attorney's request to have the conviction for falsifying business records delayed. That's the Stormy Daniels so-called hush money case where Trump was charged with falsifying business records. That's what the actual charge came out of the whole thing. For more, we go to yesterday's edition of American Agenda.
All right, joining us now, former U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C., and former Chief Counsel at the Senate Rules Committee, Joe DeGenova, plus former Senior Justice Department official Victoria Tensing, both are Newsmax contributors. Good to see you both here. Joe, I'm going to start with you. I don't think the majority of the public cares about this sentencing, or else they wouldn't have voted him in as president with a record 77.3 million votes for the ex-president there. Your thoughts on why, though, they're continuing on? I feel like in the end, though, this only continues to backfire against Democrats.
Well, I think the American people rendered a verdict of acquittal on November the 5th. And what Judge Merchan is doing here is he knows that Donald Trump cannot be called a convicted felon until he is sentenced. And the only reason he is going to a sentencing and not allowing the president to appeal the substance of the conviction is because he wants to smear the president along with Alvin Bragg. I mean, it's pretty clear that Judge Merchan is a tool of the Biden Justice Department, the Merrick Garland Justice Department, who sent a senior official there to try this case on behalf of Alvin Bragg. I think the American people have voted acquittal. And I think that the continuation of this case by Judge Merchan is an affront to justice. And I agree with the Trump people trying to appeal as much as possible without a sentence.
Victoria, we had a spirited conversation before with Professor Dershowitz, and he kept asking the Democratic panelists on with us, the former mayor of Connecticut, what's the crime here? Does anybody still know what the crime is?
Nobody does.
And also the fact that President Trump's the only person that's ever been tried for something like this. I mean, it just goes to show the political persecution, and it continues to this day.
let me just say that you could not make a misdemeanor out of this case.
Right.
You cannot, because the statute of limitations had long passed on any misdemeanor. And you had to have the felony in order to make the statute of limitations problem go away. And no one, bring that Connecticut mayor back and put him on and ask him what was the felony that the jury convicted Trump of. And he cannot tell you, because the jury can't tell you, because Mershon told the jury, you don't have to agree on what the felony is. You don't even have to specify it. You just decide that he did. And you don't even have to be unanimous about the same felony. How about that for error?
Former senior Department of Justice official Victoria Townsend and attorney Joe DeGenova on American Agenda. Bianca De La Garza spoke about the judge's ruling as well with Sebastian Gorka.
Even today, his legal team is now working, trying to halt the sentencing, which Mershon scheduled for the 10th. It can be virtual. But the fact that they want to do it, and of course, to be able to try and label him a convicted felon before inauguration.
Yeah, I mean, these people do not have any limit to what they will do. This is the Saul Alinsky playbook. Their hatred drives them to this philosophical endpoint where the ends justify the means. So whether it's the Russia hoax, whether it's spying on the campaign, spying on the president himself and his team, whether it's putting my former White House colleagues, Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, in prison, they know no bounds, because for them, it's not about representative government, Bianca. It's about power above all else, raw, naked power.
Well, you talked about the mandate that Donald Trump has, and obviously the trifecta in the Senate. Senate Majority Leader John Thune did appear on CBS over the weekend talking about some of the confirmation hearings and whether or not folks like Kash Patel as FBI director and also Pete Hegseth do have enough votes here. Let's play this.
I think these are nominees who are new enough. They've been going around and conducting their meetings, which I think, frankly, have gone very well. But they still have to make their case in front of the committee. And, we don't know all the information about some of these nominees. I think we know a lot about them, but they deserve a fair process.
Pete Hegseth, January 14th, we just talked about J6, renewing people's trust in the FBI, if that can be done, with Kash Patel, of course, is the president's pick. There are so many issues that our nation is facing, and you're coming in. Our final thoughts here is the counterterrorism. We just saw this horrific terrorist attack in New Orleans, and we know that that is something that is on the minds of many Americans, Sebastian.
4 years ago, the anti-American forces of the Democrat Party lit a fuse on a threat that is global against the United States. They have empowered global jihadism by Biden's surrender of Afghanistan, by turning their back on our friends in Israel after the most horrendous loss of life in that nation since the Holocaust ended in 1945. The lack of leadership, the opening of our borders have made us more vulnerable than any time since September the 11th. That is why the president's team should be confirmed.
Sebastian Gorka, now a former Newsmax host and the incoming Senior Director of Counterterrorism and Deputy Assistant to President Trump. I started off with commentary from Carl Higbie, and I'm going to wrap it up with some more commentary from Carl Higbie. Make sure you catch his show Frontline every weekday at 5 o'clock Eastern.
But two things got to happen simultaneously here. Okay, all the ceremony stuff is over. The new 53-seat majority Senate must confirm Trump's cabinet. And any Republican who voted for a single nominee for Biden needs to check their attitude and their virtue at the door and give Trump his people. And two, now the new Congress is in session. They got to get to work. I said this the other night. They got 14 days to have bills written, negotiated, and passed for him to sign on day one. And the things they promised, like all the things that they sent flyers to us, we donated money, we knocked on doors, we put bumper stickers on our car and signs in our lawn for. They promised us massive cuts, parental rights, school choice, national recovery, balanced budget, undo all this woke garbage. Let's go, guys. Start banging out single-issue bills. Look, Democrats didn't even bother to talk to Republicans when they were in the majority. And Republicans have the trifecta now. It's our turn. You guys don't need to have a single conversation with a Democrat for the next 2 years. I could care less about bipartisan spirit. Yes, you do need 60 votes in the Senate for a spending bill, but who cares? Let them be the reason it shuts down. Put it on their plate. Win the PR war. If these people haven't learned this so far, there are about 14 days until their primaries start. So here's to you, America. We just averted the fall of the free world.
So there you go. And Donald Trump's legal team continues working on getting the New York conviction delayed. Otherwise, that will happen on Friday. President Biden is in Cali, adding more designated monuments to his list before he leaves office. The body of former President Jimmy Carter will be flown to Washington, D.C. today and lie in state inside the Capitol Rotunda. Vice President Harris will deliver a eulogy today at a ceremony at the Capitol. Between today and yesterday, that's like the most work she's done since she's been the vice president. President Biden will deliver the eulogy at Carter's state funeral at the National Cathedral on Thursday. Everybody who is somebody and those who think they're somebody will be there, as I've said before. Carter will then be buried back in his home state of Georgia. The other big news was Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing his resignation.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister.
President-elect Donald Trump taking some credit for it, saying Trudeau is resigning because of the tariffs that he may impose on Canada. On Wall Street, the stock markets opened fairly higher again today. Yesterday, the markets did pull back some after a big opening. We'll see what happens today. There's not really all that much going on that could affect the markets, form of earnings or economic data or anything like that. Eyes are all on the big jobs report due out on Friday. Be sure to keep up with all of the news and breaking developments throughout the day and night on Newsmax N2 and Newsmax.com. It all begins each and every day with Wake Up America, National Report, American Agenda, Bianca De La Garza, Greta Van Susteren, Carl Higbie, Finnerty, Rob Schmidt, Greg Kelly, Ed Henry, Chris Salcedo, Todd Starnes, and much, much more with analysis from people like Senator Rick Santorum, political analyst Mark Halpern, Judge Napolitano, attorney Joe DeGeneva, Hogan Gidley, Mike Huckabee, and many others. I'm Tony Marino. As always, thank you for listening to the Newsmax Daily. I do appreciate that. If you haven't already, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you may be listening to. Now that the holiday season is all over, we're bringing back Taco Tuesday. And keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Relentlessly slowing the spread of the stupid every day. It's the Rob Carson Show.
Hey, it's Rob Carson. My podcast is about leading-edge commentary and opinion, great guests, and the biggest political comedy in the country. My satire was featured on the Rush Limbaugh program for over a decade, and now it's fresh and new and on my podcast. It's not just another desk-pounding conservative tirade. It's about entertaining, informing, and motivating. Patriotism and hope. You don't need more stress in your life. You need to feel good and, dare I say, even laugh. Subscribe and download at your favorite podcast platform or go to newsmax.com/listen.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.